What is up, everybody? Here we are, episode 3 at the WAYT podcast. We have guests, we have friends, we have good times already. Have been
James
rolling.
in the back.
James in the back, yeah. James is still with us. For those of you that are watching, he's producing today. He's still with us.
We just
remember James. Remember him?
After the last political episode, we didn't oust him.
This is now an American-only podcast.
That's awesome.
Well,
100% American.
I might have to run the mic over to him on occasion. I just need to hear his thoughts on something.
Oh my gosh. No, yeah, I think I agree with that. I don't know. Honestly, when he told me he wasn't going to be as involved in this episode, I was kind of sad. I was like, oh man, what am I going to do?
I wouldn't have come.
But he doesn't have one of these shirts that we're matching.
I know, dude. I know, guys. Come on.
What's the shirt all about?
Church. It's our it's our own church's merch about the vision of the one. So that's the sheep.
Yes.
The lost sheep. The shepherd goes after, leaves 99 to go after the one. We're all about that. That's our vision.
I can't wait till you give me my free shirt. That's
wow. It says something on the back.
I know James.
It does.
James is nodding.
But it would be a nightmare for me to show you. But it does.
But do you know what it says?
It says something about reaching and raising, Shelter Cove
Authentic.
Community Church. Stuff like that.
And it's like an exercise shirt.
I certainly don't use it for that, but
It's that material.
It's lighter.
No, it's a great material, and it also we partner with a ministry, Agape International
Ministries.
Awesome.
Mission. Agape International
Nailed
Missions.
it. First try.
Who they're just based in Cambodia, is that right? And they partner with survivors of trafficking there to
Oh my word.
equip them to make shirts and stuff like that. So every shirt comes with like a little tag of who made it. And it's like,
no, forget it then.
like
I feel bad about asking for one free or trying to claim one. I will definitely pay.
We'll actually jack the price up just
Double
for you.
price, no problem.
This is
No
because
problem.
our church is awesome.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We do so many
That is
things that
amazing.
are I don't know, we are hard at work to reach and raise authentic followers of Jesus at Shelter Cove. I love so much
wow.
all the things that we do here. So
Very cool.
With that said, it's a really great segue. Both of you are here kind of on an adjacent level, a partnership with Shelter Cove in that both of you work for Downey Park Counseling Associates, which is a business that we partner with to refer people for counseling, Christian counseling services, which just so happens to be the topic of our podcast episode today. So
yes,
We have the experts
So we have Chris
in our network that we know that could
really
make this time.
Yeah.
Scraping the barrel.
You're the most qualified people that we know that could make this time. And
Hey, and let me add, I mean, Shelter Cove has been an amazing friend to Downey Park. We've been friends together, and you've got amazing resources. We had Bob Irwin on the podcast. We've had Victor Aguilera, and wife at a separate
At a separate
you
situation.
just let everybody show up, huh?
super good, super blessed to have that relationship, and and they refer people to us at Downey Park. We have 17 both licensed counselors and and counselors, biblical counselors, pastoral counselors. We have a couple pastoral counselors.
Oh, cool.
And it's been a huge blessing, and super pumped to be able to be here and add whatever I can.
Well, just as a brief introduction, because I don't think I mentioned your guys' names quite yet. We have Chris Oneth.
That helps. I'm Chris Oneth.
We have Chris Oneth and Caroline Howard.
Yep.
Nice.
So, guys, welcome. Thank you for being here again. I'm excited to dive into this. So, I think, Nathaniel, why don't you pose the first question? I'm just looking at our outline.
Yeah. I would just love to get to know a little bit about you. I know way too much about you, Caroline, because
you're my nephew
I married into your
in law.
family. Yeah,
That's awesome.
But Chris, but even for both of you guys, I would love to hear an introduction of how you would introduce. Oh wait, no, actually, let's do this. This would be fun. How would you introduce each other? Because I think that would be very fun.
That's great.
And then after that, I would love to hear just kind of how you got into counseling and kind of got into that world. So, Chris, how would you introduce Caroline?
Can I add things after he says?
Oh, of course, yeah. Because we know it's not going to be good.
Ooh, I better start off strong.
I'm glad you're starting.
No, yes, totally. No, this is Caroline Howard. She is a biblical counselor, a life breakthrough coach, and she has tremendous gifting and insight that the Lord's given her. And it's not just that it dropped on her. She goes after it. She studies. She relates to people very well. She's a wife, a mom, and the Lord has called her in a few different directions that I don't know that I could ever would stand up to. So she's quite the amazing person. And
gosh.
and now that she's educated, I'll actually listen to her. She just got her
Just say
bachelor's.
now that I'm educated, you
No.
listen to me.
So it was years ago. Melanie, my wife, was like, "You've got to hire her," and I was like,
He told
we
me
didn't
no.
listen, we didn't have any.
This is why I asked you to. Yeah, this is
Can I
perfect.
explain?
Yes, but I just had to give that up.
Well, I was very insecure about hiring like non-licensed and all this other stuff. And here's the deal about licensing, mental health licensing is needed. It's good. It's awesome. But you can have an unlicensed counselor be a much better counselor than a licensed counselor. Mm-hmm. A lot of it, yes, there's the work put in, but also a lot of it has to do with ability, insight, able to empathize, able to connect with people, which this woman is incredible at. She's never met a stranger. And so, she just has a way of helping people feel heard and empowered. And so I can't speak highly enough. But yes, my wife said hire her, and I was like, I don't know, I feel weird. And then I did it anyway because marital happiness.
Sing to the wife.
It's the wife.
And
Nice.
it's turned out to be amazing. And I'm like, very cool. So
What an introduction! Wow,
that's Caroline Howard.
This is amazing. You should have.
Wow.
Well, he's Chris. He's a guy.
I feel honored.
This is
After
Chris.
that, I feel honored to know you. Like,
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
wow.
I feel honored to be me, I guess.
Right on. So,
Yeah,
how would
so
you?
can I
So I mean,
introduce-
you look pristine and you're well kept, put together and stuff, but you're as tough as nails. You really are.
Oh, it's
Even though you
tough.
cry, it doesn't mean you're not
Even
tough.
though
You,
I
it's
cry.
you.
I think we
you
have tissues in here
Yeah,
somewhere.
you're made
Yeah.
of some
Right here.
stern stuff there, lady. So that's pretty awesome.
Well, thanks, brother.
And thank you, sis.
Alrighty, Caroline, how would you introduce Chris?
Make it good.
I know.
I mean, you have to. If it's not good, that's even better.
This is Chris.
Hi. Hi.
The owner of Downey Park Counseling. He doesn't just work there. He runs the joint quite well, if I might add.
CEO.
CEO,
Wow.
CFO.
Sounds weird. I'm still waiting for the
ABC.
adults to take it away.
XYZ. He's all the letters.
All the letters.
Indeed.
He's also an LMFT. See, he's all the
What's that-
letters.
what's
What
that
is
mean?
that?
A licensed marriage and family therapist.
Thank you.
Oh,
So he is licensed because we do need the licensed people
Yes.
so that as unlicensed people don't get in trouble.
Sure.
Yeah, and just an amazing counselor. I get to share a wall with him counseling, and so I get to hear things
Oh, boy.
sometimes. So it's great. He is the no nonsense kind of counselor. And so
really?
I joke.
in these, I was gonna say in these
No,
few
you
minutes,
do.
I don't get that at all.
No,
like that.
okay, so I
met
mean
you
it
here.
like he's gonna tell you how it is. Like he's
sure,
not
okay.
he's not gonna beat around the bush, and that's why like I'll have clients and I'll need to refer out or they'll ask they need a counselor for their spouse or something, and I'll say, well, do they like someone who beats around the bush, or do they want like a tough guy who's just gonna give it to them straightforward? And if that's what they want, I refer them to Chris.
There's benefits
Which I
and drawbacks to
appreciate.
each,
There is,
just like everything.
totally.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
people need different parts of it.
Yeah,
and
gentler
stuff.
approaches and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I like to think I try to be gentle, but maybe my gentle is like hardcore to others. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not saying it as a negative.
No, not
That's
at
a
all.
positive.
I take it as a
Total
positive.
positive.
You're like glowing after your introduction, and he's like thinking it is about his life. He's like,
No.
Chris is okay. So Chris
Sorry.
is the life of the party. He's the guy. Like on a Friday night, if we don't have plans, it's like let's call the onus. We know they'll be like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
and we
I
can
love
have a
that.
good time.
That's
so
awesome.
great brother, great friend, great therapist.
Thank you.
Nathaniel,
I'm
that
glad
was-
he said
that was
yes.
fun, dude.
I know you have a wife. Do you have any kids?
I have several. No,
Several wives or kids.
Oh, wives or kids? Wait. What was the question?
I,
Did
Do you have
I
wife
heard
or
you have a
kids?
wife, but do you have any kids?
I do. I have a wife of 31 years, Melanie.
Wow.
She's amazing. So I looked up a bunch of, you know how they have special German words that mean a bunch of
Yeah,
things?
yeah.
Like Schadenfreude means like delighting in someone else's suffering. Which
Kind
is
of a weird one, you know, off the top of your head.
Exactly.
The one he related to the most.
The other one I can remember is Gretchenfragen, which is the ultimate question. That's what it means. The ultimate question. The question rule them all. I'm not sure why I started to introduce that, but
The word that describes your wife.
amazing.
No. The German word. We talked about it yesterday at work.
It's
Like how
the one
amazing
where
it was.
it's the one.
It wasn't either of those.
It's the one where
He can't even
there's
get
a
it out.
German word that means you are embarrassed for someone else's deed, and they are not embarrassed, but they should be.
Oh, okay.
So that is Melanie toward me.
You're never embarrassed.
So
she constantly lives in embarrassment secondhand for you.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
She's constantly like melting down.
So
like,
we
oh my
watched.
gosh.
We took the kids to see Lord of the Rings in Riverbank Sunday.
Amazing.
Yes,
Well
Fellowship
done.
of the
You've
Ring.
awesome kids then.
Well done.
Gets me emotional every time.
Yeah, that's
there
right.
is no other way. Anyway, the philosophy there, even though Caroline hates it and doesn't ever want
I
to see
don't hate it. I just
At
can't
any
get
rate,
into it.
James, can you switch please? I'm just kidding.
James, we're tag teaming you in.
So at one point, some like amazing thing that happened, one of thousands in Lord of the Rings, and I clapped. I was like, "Woo!" Oh, it's when they announced the Fellowship of the Ring.
Oh, nice.
I bring to you the
Oh, that's
Fellowship
pretty
of
great.
the Ring.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I still get chills.
yeah.
So I clap and Melanie like reaches over and tries to stop me
Because nobody else was clapping.
So she had the German word where she is totally embarrassed for me. But,
That's amazing.
But she also loves me very much, and I'm loved by her. And yeah, and she's ride or die, so she will.
Wow.
go to
Oh,
ends
there's
of
the
earth for
word.
me. Yeah.
Wait, like no,
Is there a
right
German
there.
word for that?
Fremdeschamen.
Nathaniel, pronounce that.
Fremdeschamen.
From shaman. That's awesome. Thank
Don't
you.
let Bjorn hear this.
Thank you, James.
That.
Friend shaman. Friend shaman.
Oh my
Bjorn,
gosh.
there you go.
Our next
That's
gen
phenomenal.
pastor is
Thank
German.
you.
Yeah, we have.
I mean,
a
he's
German
from
pastor.
Canada, but he speaks German.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's why he was like, anyway.
You should know that.
That's
Chris?
amazing.
I do want to ask you, so as CEO of Downey Park Counseling, what got you into counseling in the first place? Like, how did you end up there?
Oh gosh, there's a circuitous Israeli route that I took. So when I start off by saying this, when I was 19 years old, I thought I knew everything. I was raised by a single mom, who, God bless her, I don't know how she put up with me. Because again, at 19 years old, I thought I knew everything, and I don't know that it's changed at 52. But so we were having a lot of conflicts because I was trying to convince her that I was right, and she wasn't seeing it. It was weird. And so she brings me into counseling in the very office that is my office.
Wow.
Well,
Like the room.
Whoa.
I know, right?
I think
Total
this
God
is
thing.
childhood trauma he hasn't worked through.
So
let's get it all out, man.
This is the counselor.
I'm not the,
This
I'm
turned
not
into-
the counselor, but let's just
let's do it. Let's throw it
Could
down.
turn into some internal family systems work
So
right now.
from there, there is this circuit, and so I meet my wife at 20. I dabble in the idea that I want to be a counselor, and that's kind of a vision that I have, marriage and family therapist. Even though I had no idea what I was doing at 20, and then I got married at 21. And years went by. At 24, I started to go back to school. And I was sitting on a bottling line at Gallo Winery watching bottles go by thinking, I got to get a skill or an education here. Because all my friends were getting their master's degrees and everything else. And we loved to have discussions, and it was there. I mean, I don't know if they said it in so many words, but it was like, dude, you need to go to school because you have these abilities to think and communicate and all this other stuff. So I was like, too hard. Until I started having children. I got married and started having children, and that was hard too. So I decided there's really no easy way. There's the hard way, and then there's the hard way. And so I started going back to school at 24, except I went to teach history.
Oh, wow.
Well, actually, before that, jump ahead before that, I went to work my way up at Gallo Winery. I was going to get a business degree, but the first class I had was like Western civilization. And by the way, a Brit taught it. Oh my
Naturally.
gosh.
There you go.
Yes.
the
And
king
he
of
had
James
this-
is
king of
clapping
Western
back there.
this
civilization.
amazing,
Yeah.
because the British accent, as we all know, is very erudite. It's very, it
Yep,
sounds
and I
very
know what that word
smart.
means.
Yeah, that's a big word.
For our listeners who don't know that word, I do, of course. But if our listeners
thanks, Nate.
didn't
Wait,
know that
James,
word.
could you put up the definition of that word for all of us?
Erudite.
James, pull up the word erudite.
is erudite.
James is here to make us all look smart today.
But he told the story of history in amazing fashion. Bedford Morris, I think his name was. Anthony Morris, that's what his name was. Anthony Bedford, Anthony Bedford.
Nailed it.
5 times. It's somewhere in the file bank. And it was
Mind
incredible. He talked about being 10 years old in the middle of Great Britain during the German bombings of the
That's crazy.
Operation Sea Lion and all this other stuff. And it was like, whoa. And I was rapt. And after hearing him, I'm like, I don't want to do business, man. I want to teach history. So that gave me a spark and a drive to go to school. And so I can't.
Thanks, James.
I cannot see
Happy.
that.
It says having or showing great knowledge or learning, erudite.
Oh, there you go. Thank you, Jaime.
Thanks, James. Appreciate you.
Yeah, so that's what. So I went to school. Then I decided I want to be a history teacher. So I was motivated. I had the vision. This is turning into a huge long story, but
this is great.
Essentially, I taught history for 8 years, and then I worked at Gallo for 8 years. I taught history for 8 years, and then I like to tell people that I got tired of having summers off. And so I thought I wanted to go into business for myself, and some opportunities, some chosen and not chosen, came my way. And I got into mental health. And then on the cusp of taking my, and by the way, the whole story of me going to school and everything else, I told it on our other podcast, but it was super God's hand. It's like, you can't really deny a lot of these things that were placed. I mean, like a Lord of the Rings, it was like, oh no, it's the end, we're going to die. And then something miraculous happens and we're delivered.
Yeah.
So I, on the cusp of taking the licensure test, my daughter finds a wedding announcement for my wife and I. And this is after, like I said, an Israeli tour through the desert. She finds the clipping, and it says, Melanie, when is our wedding announcement, Melanie wants to do this and this and this, and Chris wants to be a marriage and family therapist. And I had forgotten all about that. Wow. I had worked at Gallo for 8 years. I went to school during part of that time to teach history. I taught history for 8 years. And then it was like God said, you are exactly where I want you. Wow. And it was like, whoa. And it's been like that. I mean, listen, running a business is not easy. Right. And so if something goes wrong, like there's like a smell in our office right now because there's some sort of rodent that died.
Wait, I
somewhere.
heard that. I didn't notice that yesterday.
Then there's not a smell in our office.
Was it me?
Yeah.
And I'm just making stuff up. But again, you get the call and you're like, fix this. I'm like, okay. So I actually brought my overalls to like crawl under the building to try and fix the deal.
Did you find it?
Did you find it?
I didn't, because apparently they called the property management who called the whatever exterminator person guy. Oh. But hey, listen, I've called
he had
his
overalls to climb under.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm like, I'm too important. I've got other things to do. Let me look busy.
Yeah.
So what? Well, I didn't hear what you asked.
Man, Chris, what a powerful testimony that's
wild.
And I'm still trying to get over the fact that like you're in the same room. That is
right.
That's crazy.
That's like So even the moments where you're like doubtful and you're like, oh gosh, should I have done this or done that or whatever? It's little things like that. And believe it or not, telling the story again and again is encouraging to me. It's like throughout God's word where people tell their story and they remember the Lord.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's like, let's not forget that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
Yeah,
That's
Caroline, I would love to hear a little bit about how you.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Because he took all the time.
Well,
Jesus.
I did.
That's not what I would say, but Victor's saying it, so.
No. All that does, we have so many things we want to get into.
I know.
That are so good. But yeah, tell us a little bit about.
I'll tell it short. So I was a homeschooling, stay-at-home mom to, I think I had all 3 kids at that time. This was about 11, 12 years ago. And the church I was attending was kind of connected with this ministry that did biblical counseling, and they offered like, hey, if anybody wants to go to school for this, we'll pay for half of it.
Oh, wow.
And he had asked, our pastor had specifically asked some of my friends, but never asked me. And being the self-doubter that I am, I'm like, okay, but I had been through a lot of stuff in my marriage and life and had a special needs kid, so I feel like I had stuff to offer. And was sitting in church, and he was announcing it again. And it just felt God like, you need to do this, you need to do this. But I'm not one to just step out and be like, hey. So I did finally was like, hey, I want to do the classes too. There was 5 of us from the church. We all took the first class. Everybody else dropped out, and I kept going.
Wow.
Caroline, you were like tough. A hobbit.
Something. I just loved it. I love knowledge. And so like, I want to constantly learn, especially when it comes to the Bible and counseling. And so did some master level courses, got some certificates, started counseling at my last church. We left that church and then was like, well, now what? I don't have like the umbrella of a church to counsel under.
Sure.
So became a licensed life coach or certified life coach, not licensed, and then begged him for a job. He finally listened to his wife and hired me.
Yeah.
And they all, like a lot of the clinicians in the office kept telling me I should go back to school, get my license, but I don't feel called to get my license. I did feel called to go back to school. Thought I was going to do sports psychology because I love the mind of an athlete. I still do love the mind of an athlete.
Dealing with the yips.
So great. But then got into integrative psychology and somatic work of like whole body healing
Oh, interesting.
and stuff. And so that's why I did integrative psychology. And then hopefully within the next month, I'll finish up classes to be a certified somatic stress release practitioner.
I don't know where the heck you find the time to do classes. That's what
I walk on my
a number of the things that blow
walk
my
on my
mind about
treadmill
your journey and all this other stuff.
do
It's
more
insane.
classes.
That's crazy.
I love learning.
Wow.
My son keeps asking me the same question. Are you ever going to be done with school, Mom? Like,
Wow.
nope. I'm a lifelong learner.
Maybe this is a good jumping off point. So I mean, you're talking about all these different types of counseling, and so like, what is the difference between biblical Christian counseling versus just regular secular counseling versus? I've heard EMDR before. I've heard, maybe you guys can talk about some of the differences between those kinds of things.
Yeah. EMDR is a form of somatic practicing.
Okay.
Right. So you're getting into like the body and stuff and bilateral stimulation and working trauma through your brain.
Here we go, folks. Get your dictionary out. I am barely keeping up with this thing.
I love EMDR.
No, yeah.
It stands for eye movement reprocessing and desensitization.
Well, desensitization and reprocessing.
You're one of those.
I'm
really bad with the placement.
Remember,
which
earlier
word
you
goes
said
where.
he's all the letters, so he might have just gotten them mixed
he has
up.
all the letters. See?
Desensitization and reprocessing. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's
Okay.
amazing. I've done a lot of that. I love it.
So I guess maybe because there are so many, maybe just to keep things a little bit more pointed, tell us the difference between biblical counseling and just regular secular counseling. Like, what's the outside of the obvious, right? Like,
So,
our
okay.
office, we're all Christians, so
We're all Christians.
We're all counseling.
So
off the Bible.
it's not to say that there's not great Christian counselors out there. It's not to say that there's not great counselors out there. But a lot of the anecdotal stuff or the story stuff that I hear is that oftentimes they'll find a licensed counselor, and they will the licensed counselor will appreciate their Christianity, but not be a Christian. And there's a huge difference when someone has confessed Christ and understands the depth and the need for our need for a savior. That changes the flavor of how to get to true mental health. And
That's
so
really good.
I would say, obviously a biblical counselor is going to both use biblical principles. I think generally a biblical counselor who is not licensed has less experience in the more extreme mental health edges, like anxiety and depression, but they will still go back into family stories. They'll go back into current ways of processing things. And they do. Both of them cross over. A licensed counselor will have more experience with, okay, you've got some pretty profound, deep stuff that's entrenched, like trauma and ways of coping that have a hard time breaking free from. Right, just like a pastoral counselor. I mean, you every church, every pastor that I know of is a counselor to some degree, and they will take on that burden for some time. But if there's a deeper, like longer lasting, more entrenched situation, then oftentimes they'll defer to the licensed counselor. Would you add anything or subtract anything?
No, I think that's good. I think that like for me, I've done some specific classes and training and gotten certificates from like specific stuff. So like parts work with internal family systems, very knowledgeable in betrayal trauma, you know, so I think that you're like, for me, like that's like, you kind of find a niche, and that's kind of what I want to stick with. But then there's also I've gotten a lot of negative stigmatism around biblical counseling too.
Right.
Because there is a sector, a line of biblical counselors who are, you literally only use scripture. And if anybody goes off of script, like the mental health part,
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
like that's ungodly and we don't deal with that.
Hmm.
And so
Yes.
So I did kind of want to wade into some of that.
Yeah.
And like,
Go.
well, I mean, just I could think really quick about how to continue the conversation rolling. But if you had more to add, but I did.
Yeah,
that is something
go
I
for
wanted to kind of talk about. Was like, yeah, there's definitely like probably a spectrum of people who, when they counsel biblically, are like, yeah, there are some people who are like very much, let's just stick with the Bible and its like most strict sense, like just taking the face
Right.
value of it, and that's very good. But I think that there's, I don't know what your guys' thoughts are, but I think there's a way in which like some research and things like that can complement some of the what the Bible says
Absolutely.
and things like that. Yeah, I wanted to get into it, but I'm not really sure I could spin it off. But unless you want to jump on.
No,
that.
I was just going to say, I think that's important too. The word complement. We're not saying replace, right? Like
Absolutely not.
we're not saying that. It's
No.
complementary to,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's important. But you can, if you had someplace you wanted to go.
Yeah, and then I also think so one of the questions I wanted to throw out there to you guys was like, I did want to talk about some of the stigmas around it, because I definitely think that there's people who look at their faith as like their spiritual health that they can put in a box separate from their like emotional and mental health and like their well-being, and they can keep them very separate, and so they can approach the Bible like, well, this is going to help me follow Jesus better, and miss out on what the Bible actually has to say about your emotions and your mental health and things like that. And so like, how would you, if somebody was in that place where they were like really keeping those things separate, like, no, the Bible's from my faith and, you know, I figure out my mental and emotional health on my own or something like that. How would you talk with that person through all that the Bible has to offer to your whole body's wellness?
Oh, I think it's a great question.
Yeah, that is.
Well, first of all, if you're keeping things separate, psychology would call that a fragmented self. And anytime we have fragmented self, we have the opportunity to be blind to parts of us, which then opens up a whole nother can of worms as to what people are capable of. That's why that's one of the reasons I believe we have people, big personalities in ministry who will up front preach the word of God and then behind closed doors do some of the most inappropriate and abusive things ever because they are fragmenting themselves. They're in a way they're saying, well, this is me over here, and then this is me over here. And that's a dangerous game to play.
Yeah.
So we are holistic, and the Bible talks about, you know, we are emotional, spiritual, mental, and physical. And the way where I get that from is, love the Lord with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Mm-hmm. So love the Lord with all your emotions and understand what those are. Be connected to those, because if you don't, you will not be fully connected to yourself, and it will come out in other ways. Soul are things of the spiritual nature, and that's not just about going to church. It's meaning, purpose, values, and heart. What is it? Heart, soul, mind. Mind is our mental capacities. That would be, I think, a realm in which we operate as individuals, how we think and how we process things. And then strength would be our physical selves, but not just our physical selves, our actions, right? And those four are a whole part of us. We cannot separate them. At the deepest level, they are all connected like a hand. And there's levels to them. Like there's levels of self-connection. I can be not connected to myself or connected to myself on a surface level and just, act on my impulses and not really think deeply about what I do and why I do it. And then there's a relational aspect too. If Victor and I are if we're not very close, we're gonna, how about them Niners? And we're gonna talk about kind of some surfacey things.
Yeah. How's the weather?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, 104 today. Jeez.
Please stop punishing us.
Sure.
But at a deeper level, that's when it gets to the more vulnerable things.
Right.
And what I think in the past has been done in the churches with mental health stuff is it's been so uncomfortable for the leadership to deal in these vulnerable and uncomfortable things like emotions, like deep spirituality, not just the action and the vision or the optic of spirituality, but deeply like living confessionally and vulnerably. It's been all such a physical manifestation of look the part in a lot of cases that when there's discussion about reaching deeper, for example, I know a lot of pastors who, well, I don't know, that's a general statement, but I've known some pastors who, when someone approaches them with a deep and vulnerable thing, there is discomfort that wells up in the pastor. He is not familiar with it. He doesn't recognize it. And so he just throws scripture at him.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Let go and let God. Well, and that's not a bad statement in and of itself, but it's bad when that's the first step.
Yeah.
It's understandable when you've been through the ringer and walked through with that person and you come to that deeper understanding where ultimately you have to let go, but not before, like truly communing with them in whatever they're going through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to jump in really quickly, and it might sort of change gears a little bit, but we have a comment from Facebook. Thank you, James, for sending that over to me. Person says, I've done biblical counseling, and it is 100,000% black and white, zero gray for mental health.
Wow.
How would you guys, I mean, I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot a little bit,
You're good.
but this is the fun of it.
Yeah, totally. It is.
Comments now. I love that.
I know.
Yeah.
How would you guys respond to something like that?
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm really good at jumping in. Leaping to conclusions. Yeah.
Again, like I said, there are biblical counselors who it is very black and white, who
Sure.
like it's just the scripture and we can't bring this mental health into it. And I think that's why, honestly, I think it's probably one of the biggest reasons why I don't want to get licensed, because I want to put an end to that like stigma around that of like,
You
no,
could
we
secretly
can
get licensed
like
and still.
my master plan. Like we
was
can
great.
combine them both,
Sure.
right? You know, and I can't obviously, well, neither one of us, we can't prescribe medications. I can't diagnose someone with an anxiety disorder.
Oh, if only.
Isn't that psychiatric?
Yeah,
Isn't
that
that
would be like a
psych-
psychologist and a psychiatrist.
Psychiatry,
Well,
right?
actually, let me speak that. So,
Okay.
psychologists cannot
They diagnose.
prescribe medications.
Yes.
And then
They can test certain things. They can do a lot of kind of
Okay.
that area, assess in certain areas. A psychiatrist is the one that will prescribe medication, and so.
So it's kind of like the level, right? You start with the licensed therapist or the biblical counselor, and
Sure.
if they think you need a diagnosis, we would refer to a psychologist.
Right.
And if the psychologist thought you needed meds, they would refer you to a psychiatrist.
Gotcha.
So a psychiatrist isn't going to talk to you; they're just going to.
Give you a,
some
give you a
do,
script.
but some
yeah.
which
Yeah.
which speaks to the individuality of the counselor. So
Sure.
this
Yeah.
biblical counselor that she saw,
Yeah.
she, I don't know.
Right.
Um,
Thank you for your comment, by the way.
yes,
Yeah,
thank you
for
very
sure.
much.
Thank
That
you.
is a great. That's some great input.
And that's not every biblical counselor. I do think that's
Right.
the majority is what I have found.
Yeah.
That is not the way that I do it. And I could easily call myself something different so that I'm not lumped under that, but I don't
Right.
want to, because I want there to be a healthy connection
You got to bring
between
the love.
the mental health world and the biblical church world, because I think
Yeah.
it's supposed to be that way.
Yeah, and even
Yeah.
going back to speaking about that individuality, like Caroline, again, according to her character,
Yeah.
is the person who's going to get like those certifications, and she's going to have a depth of understanding that not a lot of therapists will have, licensed therapists.
Yeah.
And so it can be very individual to your point. So my speculation about the black and white is also about discomfort. It's about also how that particular biblical counselor deals with their own issues.
Interesting.
It's either one or the other. And that's
wow.
that's a dangerous game
Yeah.
Sure.
because it's also very hard on the self. Now that has a shelf life. It may work for 10, 20, 30 years. But then when it doesn't, there is a massive like collapse
Interesting.
because the hardest black and white to me is like, I mean, it's in a way, it's a paradox because in a way it's easier to just get black and white. It's this or that. But it's also can be like more damaging because it's either this or it's that, and I'm not willing to hear in between. If I've already come up with a conclusion about you, Victor, right, and it's black and white, then I'm not willing to sit in the it's actually called the liminal in between, and it's that area that provides a lot of discomfort for people because it may not have a do this and it's done.
Yeah, it doesn't resolve easy.
Yeah.
But that is not the Christian life.
Yeah.
I don't think that's life in general.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
One of the things that I learned early on, and I learned this because of counselors I've had who would be like, you do it this way. And if you don't do it this way, you're wrong. And then we can't meet anymore. And I would go away and I'd pray about it and be like, but that's not the way God's leading me. It's different than what you say. And so even like when I have an initial session with a new client, the first thing I say is, hey, it's in our little thing. I'm not a God, I'm a guide. And whatever we say in here, if we're making a decision, if I'm saying, hey, maybe you should try this, I want you to go pray about it. And I want you to see if the Holy Spirit inside of you is telling you that's what you should be doing. And if it's not,
right. Excellent.
that trumps me, every single day.
Because I imagine the idea is that you guys are trying to partner with like what God wants to do in someone's life to like bring them out of a situation or to help them work through it.
Right.
And so,
and we're sinners and we're going to get it wrong sometimes.
Sure.
You don't say.
Yeah, we're not, what I know for me, what we do, like, I am so honored to get to do this job. I 100% feel called by God. He has definitely equipped me. And the fact that I get to walk with his children and watch the work, because that's what I'm doing, really. I'm watching the work that he is doing in them and through them it is mind-blowing, and it is just so
it's the
humbling
best part
and
of our
honoring.
job.
Oh, it really is.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you for your comment. I do want to go back to stigmas, and that's kind of the topic we were chatting a little bit about before we addressed the comment. But I do want to ask specifically you, Chris, and the reason is because I feel like there's also a stigma that I want to chat through about men in counseling and men seeking out counseling.
Right.
Why do you guys think that this is such a struggle for? I mean, I'm sure that you probably see it from both sides, but I would imagine more so from men. Why?
I mean, I could go in a number of directions with that. We had a couple podcasts on masculinity, and cool. I think part of it is to some degree, in the way men think. I'm glad you're sitting down, but men and women tend to think differently. Weird.
Whoa. You heard it here first, folks.
So now, granted, there can be crossover, but the bell curve is such that, women tend to be more emotional, spiritual. They have greater access to their emotions. When I say spiritual, you could distill that down into a great deal of women drag their husbands to church, which is true.
Yeah,
true.
We see that.
But you could also say spiritual in the sense that stuff means they find meaning in more things. Men tend to be more mental, physical. In other words, tell me what to do and I'll do it. And there's a place for that. Yeah. But the two, and we all have those four parts because it's emotional, spiritual, mental, physical. We all have those four parts. Women tend to be more emotional, spiritual, men, mental, physical. But we need the other. And I'm not just saying married relationship. I mean like friendships and as appropriate, right?
It's part of the church, like the whole beauty of the church.
Body of Christ.
Right.
Hello. Yeah, absolutely.
Like brothers and sisters then. For
absolutely.
Way more if you're a single child. Now you have all these brothers and sisters that can help complement you. Yeah.
Yes. And by the way, I don't think you're truly close to a person until you've had some sort of conflict. Anyway. Conflict is not a bad thing, right? We've had conflict.
We've had conflict.
Have we fought, Victor?
We had beef.
Maybe on a few occasions.
Oh, okay.
It's amazing.
I was going to say we've had some disagreements.
I've been married 31 years, and I always tell people my wife is my greatest adversary. She's amazing. Anyway.
That's your introduction of her.
Greatest advocate and adversary, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a paradox there, but that's the liminal in between where it's not like you're either for me or against me. You're not. You're like disagreeing with me and you're for me.
Yeah.
Weird. Yep. So back to the men thing.
Yeah.
I think men have seem like a lot of us a great majority of us, like I said, on the bell curve, tend to want to move into action before we move into deep reflection and connection.
Wow.
So we want to do something.
Wait, hold on. Can you say that one more
Say that
time
again for people in the back.
Yeah. One more time.
As men, we tend to move into action before we move into connection and reflection.
That's like really good.
I was gonna say you gotta let that sit for a minute. That's really profound.
I'm writing that down for a sermon.
Hey,
for real.
have at it. So we
do a
will
sermon
be
on it.
like, this is why a lot of men, what I observe for a lot of men is when their wife is emotional about something and is hurt, frustrated, all this stuff, she wants to share. He gets really wound up, anxious. He turns it into anger because he wants to do something about it to fix it, to make it go away.
The nail in the head, right? We've all
Nail in
seen
the
that.
head.
Have you
The
all seen
nail
that
in the
video
head.
of the nail
Yeah.
in the head?
Yeah.
Sure haven't.
And she's sitting there with the nail in her head saying, I have a headache. She's saying, I have a headache and my head just hurts. And he's like, take the nail out of your head.
All my sweaters
And she's
are
like, this isn't about the nail. I need you to hear that this hurts.
so great because
And
every
he's just like,
every guy can relate to that video,
Yeah.
Sure.
and every girl
And every
can
girl
relate
can
to that
relate
video.
Okay.
So back to men going to counseling, it's like I think it's, believe it or not, I think it's a product of something that God has placed in us to want to move into action to take care of.
Mm-hmm.
So then the perversion of it comes in the form of, I've got to be able to fix this on my own. I mean, listen, yes, God has called us to work on things, to take care of things, but at the same time, he has not called us to do it by ourselves.
Right.
And so it seems weak to a guy to go ask for help or to even get emotional and all that stuff. And so I'm here to tell people, look, I'm not the most macho guy there is.
You did ride a motorcycle here.
I was gonna say
That's pretty sick.
A wheelie
Have
the
you seen his
entire
truck?
way.
Yeah.
Maybe compensation, who knows, but whatever.
Wait, let's not go
Yeah,
there.
you're definitely the manliest guy in this room. I don't know about
Nathaniel,
that.
we don't bring those things up.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
No, but at the same time, being able to hold that in a masculine sense, that we can be totally sensitive and brought to tears, yet also we can say, it's time to get to work.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, to me, that's the full scope and appreciation of our manliness. That's what Christ shows us.
Yeah.
Right. He didn't shirk away from confrontation. We know that.
Yeah.
Right. He also didn't shirk away from his deep felt love and emotions.
Yeah.
And so, so anyway, to answer that question, I think men are the discomfort of reaching inside themselves to understand those parts they need to, in a sense, confess and bring out into the open. That's not a familiar or comfortable place, and they haven't built that muscle yet. So,
and we do have a great, I think we did a 2-parter on our podcast of toxic masculinity and bringing that from one side to the center of that bell curve.
but it is. Let me remind you again. It's a product of something that God has put in us.
Yeah,
We have perverted it because we're perverts.
it's his favorite word.
And thanks be to the Lord who guides us and directs us to his ultimate glory, so that we can say, this is where the gift you've given me. It's not something I'm taking and saying, this will save me. Being macho and not sharing emotion, that'll save me. No, it won't. Being able to hold that in that liminal, uncomfortable in between instead of being black and white, that's what's you're gonna get the most traction with. So.
Yeah. I'm sure that like probably both of you guys could speak to the other, but like Caroline, do you see any trends like that with women? Not necessarily maybe the same specific thing, but like as women approach counseling, do you see like any sort of trends there?
Well, yeah, because women come in emotional, right? And so they're not really even at times using the thinking part of their brain because they're so just that part of their brain is shut off. They're stuck in the emotional part of their brain.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's working through that, teaching them how to process their emotion, get the thinking part of their brain back on, because there's times where it's like, hey, your emotion needs to take a back seat and you need to do some action. So it is kind of like the opposite side of the pendulum kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Well,
interesting.
I do want to take just a quick second. I know earlier we were talking about, Chris, what you had shared, amazing wisdom. But I just wanted to take a minute to be thankful for our lead pastor, Jeremy. We have a sermon that we did mental health on.
Fabulous.
And I'm really happy.
So
I'm really happy to hear that it was good from somebody who's in the profession.
I get a little nervous sometimes of where are they going to go? But he did such an amazing job.
That's awesome.
And hit everything that I hoped and always wished a pastor would hit.
You can find it on YouTube. Is that
nice?
Shelter Cove app. Just throwing that out there.
Oof.
Wow.
Shelter Cove app. What a plug.
App.
But all that to say, I just wanted to appreciate and encourage him. I don't know if he listens to this all the time, but just to encourage him, like for those of you guys that are listening and they're like, man, I really wish I would love to hear more than just one episode about this. Shelter Cove definitely has an entire series where we spent a good amount of time talking about mental health and what it means to be mentally healthy. Yeah, so
that's quite a departure from, I mean, part of what we alluded to earlier is that there are those pastoral counselors or biblical counselors who very black and white. Yeah. And that was the behavior of the church. I mean, I grew up in the 80s where like the church and psychology were like bitter enemies.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, I mean, the church would say psychology is like a religion and all this other stuff. And to some degree, people can make it that. Absolutely. Psychology will not save you.
Right.
It's not powerful enough, right?
Yeah.
But it can give us valuable insight into how people behave, their mental processes, what happens during like different types of the way they were raised and all this other stuff that the gospel totally speaks into. Yeah. And if we don't sit and like hear that out and understand that, we're not going to know where exactly to apply the gospel. We're just going to say, we'll do this, not that.
Yeah. What I love, this is my favorite part about when I studied to become a biblical counselor was we studied a lot of secular psychologists.
Yeah.
Yalom was one of my favorites, and our homework would literally be...
Excuse you. What was that name?
Yalom.
Irvin Yalom, yeah.
Sounds like Gollum from
YLOM. And I still do this to this day is you take the book, we read it, and in the margins, we're gospelizing it. Like
absolutely.
This is how this ties into the gospel. And cool. Just over and over. And so that's how I was actually trained to be a biblical counselor was through that stuff.
Yeah, because God's truth can shine through like secular work and like people who don't even know it. It's just a matter of sifting through it.
True.
Right.
Like you just have to sift through to know this is what God said here, just in a different way that maybe is more applicable or relatable, right? And so,
so many times I've said, we as Christians, if we are sitting at a table and there are some empty chairs and we're, say, at the top floor of this tower, it sounds
I like this
weird.
picture.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I'm a big fan.
It's a penthouse, baby.
Are we in San Francisco?
So in other words, we have this biblical understanding. We know Scripture. We've applied Scripture in loving and gentle and understanding ways. When the secular world finally knocks on the door, we are to invite them in and have a place at that table. Or in this case, when psychology like says, "Oh, hey, look at this neat thing I found." By the way, one of the main ways of addressing mental health is called cognitive behavioral therapy, and that is, like when you get to understand your emotions, getting to the thoughts that lead to the emotions, and then either accepting the thought or challenging the thought. Where have you heard that before?
So is that like take your thoughts captive and bring them before the Lord and think on whatever's true and right and just and
you don't say.
Yeah.
Second
Been there
Corinthians.
forever. That's where I mean, where psychology is like, oh, this great new thing I've discovered, and we're like, oh no, we've been talking about this for about 2,000 years. So.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
I think James agrees. I just see him over there sitting in his chair like...
He's
James,
chomping
you need a
at the bit.
microphone for a while.
I know.
Yeah.
It's like, and as Christians, we need to be loving and humble about that.
Yeah.
That is not the God. These truths of the gospel are not there to give us some sort of power over the secular world who is trying to find peace and will never find peace.
Right.
It's there for us to see them and in their struggle be able to be present with them and hear them, and then say, "Oh, you know what? I might understand you on some level, and here's what I've come to know and believe about who God has made me." So
Yeah. Wow.
I've gotten that a lot lately in studying somatic practices because a lot of that people will say is like new agey kind of stuff. And it's a secular course I'm taking. And when people find out I'm a biblical counselor, they're like,
Isn't it
jaw dropping?
How do you do that? And
it's
you know,
amazing people's reactions when you're like, oh yeah,
and I'm like, oh, I do grounding work. Yeah, I go stand out barefoot in the grass, and it's like, what were we created? We were created to live in the Garden of Eden.
That's right.
We were created to be barefoot, and so the fact that like
let the dogs out.
Yeah. And so the fact like that there could be something healthy to that. You don't think God pre-planned that maybe because he knew how he was creating the world, and we weren't created to live in a world of sin and trauma and everything. So these bodies cannot handle that. And so, working through somatics is working that stuff back out of the body and bringing us back to the body we're created to have in the Garden of Eden.
So you would advocate for like getting barefoot in a river and
don't start
stuff
with me
like that. Okay.
I feel like there's an inside story there somewhere.
He knows I don't like bodies of water.
Zero nature girl.
And I don't like.
You're like, the grass on my lawn is fine, and that's it.
It is, but you can bet your bottom that I take my shoe and kind of shuffle it and make sure, because we get little lizards in our grass and bees, and so I make sure it's clean, and then I stand on it, and
it's still clean with the
That's
lizard.
I'm not
bees.
getting in the ocean. I'm not getting in a lake or a river. I might go barefoot. I might walk barefoot
Someday,
in a river.
Caroline, I will consider it my
ice fairy or
greatest
something.
victory
Just
if
do
I
it.
can get you knee
Like up in
deep in a
Yosemite,
lake.
you're not gonna.
You just said barefoot. We're not going up to the knees. Barefoot.
Why is
you
that
can
why
wear
you won't do
sandals
it?
because of all the
Small.
rocks.
Let's talk about
and
why
stuff.
you won't want to go into a body of water.
We've talked about it so much.
We talked about her fear of canals. It was amazing.
I just conquered my fear of canals. I never walked alongside a canal because
I thought you meant like swim in it. I'm like, Splasher's
No,
said
no,
not
no.
to do that. So you're
that's
crazy
what I
for
said.
that.
I said Splasher's the one that caused
I
that
trust
trauma.
Splasher and Smokey. All right, if a big animal tells me something, I do it. all right?
Animated animal.
Those animated
you,
animals
Disney.
are really smart.
Yeah, I will listen to them.
So guys,
Anyways, I'm finally at a point in my life where I'm working through some of those
I'm
fears.
so proud of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Guys, I do have another question.
Yeah.
And this one kind of brings us back into the trenches of some seriousness, but
Nice.
but I do have a question about like for those watching, or maybe for those people that know somebody going through some really deep stuff, like how what is an appropriate way to approach somebody who you feel like might benefit greatly from going to counseling? Perhaps as a man,
Yeah.
when you're like, hey, dude, brother, listen, man, it sounds like you're really going through it. I think that you might benefit from this. Like, is there an appropriate way to?
Well, I think first, like, are you as the person telling them, are you going to counseling? Have you done that through your own life?
Oh,
right?
Sure.
Caroline, you were so spot on. I was like, you first.
Yeah, because and that's what I'll tell people, because like especially clients, I'm like, oh, like my mother or my so-and they need it, and I said, well, share what you're going through.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it. It's not necessarily a front approach of you should do this. It's oh my gosh, I'm going to counseling. This is what I'm learning. This is what I worked through. This is how it's helped. And so again, it's showing them by you're doing the action, being relatable to them. Continue that open conversation of sharing your own stuff, and then in the hopes of they'll eventually come around to that conversation.
Well, and I know when Caroline says share your own stuff, she's not talking about hijacking.
No.
Where someone starts to share about themselves
Right.
and you're like, oh, that totally reminds me of my situation.
Yeah,
then you talk for the next hour.
Oh goodness!
Sure.
Like youth, the kids I work with do that all the time. It's
and
insane.
they're all growing into it and stuff like that.
They don't
Everything is about
respond anymore to what someone else says. It's fascinating to watch. It's
Wow.
like one person will share like this is what I'm going through, and the next person like won't acknowledge that whatsoever, and will just share like their own thing, and then the next person will just share their own thing. There's like
Interesting.
not conversation happening anymore. It's
Nobody's
like,
listening?
It's crazy.
So it's
it's crazy.
actually a stage of moral development, which we're going to talk about in our next few podcasts.
Ooh, teaser.
Oh, we are?
That we have not yet recorded. So anyway,
Okay.
I know
stay tuned.
the topic
Welcome
of
to your
our
own
next
podcast, Caroline.
Yeah.
no, but Victor, to your point, I think it is about sitting with them
Sure.
as much as you can,
Sure.
hearing them, not moving to an immediate fix, because the immediate fixes can be more about making us more comfortable. Like if I give you a fix, then I feel powerful and I feel like,
Whoa.
I
Oh,
have
boy.
helped you.
Oh boy,
I have helped
as
you.
pastors, that's real.
Oh, it sure
Wow.
is.
Yeah.
It sure is.
Yeah.
And to be able to say, it's okay that I don't have a pat answer for you right now,
Yeah.
but let's talk about this. Let me understand the ins and outs of this, and hear, like connect. That's where you have the space to go, man, have you thought about like talking to someone else about this?
Can I also jump in here too? So like as a pastor, let me ask you guys, like what is the line between like okay, at this point you should go and see a counselor now, like as a pastor.
Oh, I see.
You see what I'm saying? Like
so from pastoral counseling to like professional.
Licensed, yeah.
Right.
Because I have to do that.
Sure.
Sometimes, right? Because I'm not licensed. So there's time. Well, like if someone wants CBT or EMDR, it's cognitive behavioral therapy, or the EMDR, I have to refer out.
Right.
Or if I feel stumped, or like if I feel overwhelmed, like that's
the sign for you.
That's the sign for me. And oftentimes,
what do I do when I'm overwhelmed?
I sit in his. You come
the
in
buck
my
stops
office.
with you, man.
Right.
I come into your
I go
office.
talk to Caroline when I'm overwhelmed.
It's what we do.
Or one of our other counselors.
Yeah.
No, that's the benefit of having a group practice.
It
Is I will
really
go
is.
flop on Mike's couch and be like, "Oh my gosh, this session I just had."
Yeah. And I'll tell, this is what this is. I don't know if I can handle it. And oftentimes he's like, "Psh, oh my gosh, you totally got this. Try this, this, and this. Or, hey, yeah, why don't we think of another therapist to, I don't want to say farm them out to. That sounds terrible. To refer them. That's the word I was looking for. To refer them to.
Yikes, you said it. It's live.
You can't even.
Well, specifically to your pastor, so I actually wrote an article about this, when pastors should refer, and I give it to pastors from time to time. I remember talking to one pastor one time, and his answer to that was of when pastors should refer. He was like, 10 seconds into it. That's because he goes, I am not the counseling type of pastor. I'm the executive type of director type pastor.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
So
Okay.
part of that is it depends on the individual.
Yeah, a bit of an
pastor,
awareness there, yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
It also is a matter of vocation, believe it or not, right?
How do you mean?
So you as a pastor, you're doing like 5,000 other things.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got all these plates spinning. And yes, part of that is connecting with the parishioners or whatever and talking and hearing. But you may not have the time
Yeah.
to devote to that person's issue as much as you would like to or they would like to.
I see.
So being able to say, hey, here's a direction that I think will really help. And it's hard for people once they, especially church members who feel connected to a pastor. It's like scary. I have to go meet this stranger.
Yeah.
That's not lost on us that
Right, not
like
at all.
you've just met us and now you're spilling out like everything.
Right.
So that's where we have to be good connectors, listeners, understanders of things. And so if a pastor senses that, okay, this is going to require more time than I have, that's one indication to refer out. Another indication might be one of boundaries. I tell people all the time, the professions with the worst boundaries are nurses, pastors, counselors, and teachers. And I was like 2 of those. But not me. No, not me.
Did you take a job here?
Right? Yeah.
Knock another one off.
I got to cover my bases. No. And that's another one of those situations where it's a gift from God to pastor, to lead, to care for, to serve.
Yeah.
But then it gets dialed to a threshold where it becomes unhealthy.
Yeah.
Right.
And so pastors might have a hard time saying, I'm not going to be able to do that. Because then they get into issues of they're a failure or they're not doing their job right. So a boundary issue would come up if a pastor is counseling someone and then say on a Sunday morning, this person wants to go and talk about, oh gosh, hey, I tried what you told me, or hey, I was thinking about our conversation the other day. And a pastor may not have time for that or may not have the capacity in that moment to take care of that. So that might be another indication of when to refer out.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a few.
Sure.
Don't worry, Victor. I'll go ahead and, I'll just refer myself. You don't have to keep. You don't have to keep meeting with me
counsel
anymore. Yeah, that was
anymore.
why he was asking. It was me.
It's really like, how do I deal with Nathaniel?
I
right
don't
now?
know how to
Look
tell.
at you for a while.
I don't know how to tell him to
Stop meeting with me.
just have a bunch of our cards in your pocket and start sprinkling them around everywhere.
There you go.
That's good.
Someone might get the hint.
Dive behind garbage cans. Yeah.
Well, I think this is probably a good moment. We have like a section within our main podcast called Behind the Veil.
Or actually, can I do one question?
I'm
before
sorry.
that?
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, looking at the time, I think we have time for one more.
Yeah, go for it.
So like, what do you feel? Because I want to like have this conversation be very practical too, in the sense that anyone who's listening can take something. So I think a big part of our heart here at Shelter Cove is like that there are real felt needs and that we want to try to meet them in the best ways that we can. So we do that. We have our own care counseling program that we have.
Nice.
People who will volunteer and go through a training process to be like our care counselors here. And some of them are like actual legit, but
Legit.
our care counselor people are great.
Shout out
but
to
they're like
Pastor
some of them
Bob
are
Irwin,
like
by the way.
licensed, and some of
Nice.
them are certified, things like that. But some of them are just volunteers who can listen and who know the Lord well and can help with that. And so we have our own thing, and Pastor Bob runs that because he's just the most caring guy in the world.
Man, Bob Irwin, man.
We love
He's
Bob.
great.
Yeah.
He's
Shout
amazing.
out to Pastor Bob.
Yeah.
So we really do care about this because we have that. We love, we refer to you guys. We have great kind of partnership there because we really do care about this. So for people listening, what do you feel like are some of the top warning lights for someone themselves on like, hey, maybe this is something, maybe counseling here at the church is something I should look into, or with you guys, or like, what are some of those warning lights in someone's own life for them to, if there's general ones, for them to think, oh, maybe I should, talk to somebody about this. Maybe they don't even know that the problem's going on, stuff like that.
Wow. That's good.
I think everyone should be in counseling.
Totally.
I'm in counseling. I've got multiple counselors. That's how messed up I am.
Well, you're counseling people and you're getting counseled yourself.
Yes,
How
it's
does
great.
that work?
It's like a full circle. Yeah. Yeah, that would be my answer.
And I'm inclined to agree.
yeah.
And like
Everyone.
I've been to,
No.
I've seen, I have no shame in saying this. Like I've seen counselors as well, but like, and I totally agree that I think it's just beneficial for everybody, especially a biblical counselor who will help you realize what God's doing in your life, right? But maybe for somebody who needs a little bit of like some specific kind of like, what are the warning lights? What's the check engine light?
So so the fact that you're saying that is on point because one of the approaches I have with clients is red gauges and green gauges. And so the red gauges tell us, oopsie, something needs attention. And the green gauges say, hey, you're firing all cylinders. Things are awesome. So in moments when you feel amazing, to be able to sit, connect to yourself and reflect about what am I doing in my life? What do I have going on in my life that just seem like I'm and it doesn't mean like everything's easy. There could be hard things in your life. You could still wake up and have a day that's just like awesome. Mm-hmm. So great. Reflect on what you're doing and some of the practices you're taking part in. And some of that can be very relational. Well, I meet with friends regularly. I am able to connect with people. That's huge. Green gauges include anything where there's a warning. Now, the problem there is you have to stop, reflect in order reflect in order to connect. And we are bad at that. I can't tell you how many couples and individuals say, oh, gosh, I'm so busy. I got all this stuff going on. And there is zero margin for connecting to the self in order to give that over to the Lord. And so to your point, if we look at emotional, spiritual, mental, physical, emotional, if we are super over emotional about stuff, if, the fact that, what happened? I got my motorcycle stuck in the mud the other day on my property, and it was super difficult for me in that moment because I was frustrated about a lot of things on the property, like that fact that we don't have a house. Anyway, and I was like, oh, God, and I got so mad. Luckily, my son was there, and he helped pull me out. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Lord. And any other day probably wouldn't have affected me, and I was like, all right, no big deal, right? But if the emotions are blown out, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't seem to like manage this. Well, conversely, the opposite is true. If you're not feeling anything, if you're numb, that's a problem. Healthy emotional behavior is a proper emotional behavior given the circumstances. So as a husband, if I have my wife in tears and she is brokenhearted and she's pleading with me and my response is, I know what your problem is, that is a huge problem. Right. So if I'm disconnected in that way, spiritually, if you've lost meaning for a lot of the reasons you do things, if you've lost drive and passion, if life just it seems just pointless to you. But again, the opposite can be true where if stuff means too, like if it's,
Yeah.
Like your toddler is not feeling well, and they pull away from you, and you are destroyed.
Yeah.
Well, that's
because your
something
family's
to-
everything. For
Yes,
you. Yeah.
yes. And so, if the meaning you're making of certain things is really like hard on you, that's time to go process, right? And physically, if we're not connected to ourselves properly, it always comes out physically. Lack of sleep, that's inability to sleep. It's wanting to sleep a lot and not getting enough. That can be a product of stress load that we've taken on that we're not aware of because that's what we do.
Yeah.
And so we're like, oh no, I can't fail these people, or I can't, I don't want to be a failure. That's a time to go get it out of you. And by the way, parts of our brain don't actually hear each other until we say it out loud. I'll say that again. There are parts of our brain that aren't able to process things unless we say it out loud. Now, I don't know what that sounds like to you, but it sounds like to me that we were made to confess. To be able to confess before our Lord and to confess in front of someone we trust and love. Because and it's amazing, especially as counselors, when we don't have to do a lot of heavy lifting and we ask a few questions and people share and light bulbs come on.
Yeah.
And that's a moment, that's that Holy Spirit moment that it's like, oh, there's
So
connection
awesome.
here. Oh,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's the juice, man.
Yeah.
So there's a few.
Wow,
Tagging
that's
on to
great.
what he said, same thing. I call it MEPS, so mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. I've just made a little MEPS.
That's kind of
And
cool.
so just to check your MEPS. How are your MEPS? Like, where do you want to be mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually? Like, write those down and then check those on the daily. Like, am I where I want to be in these?
Yeah.
And if not, I need to do something about it.
Right.
Yeah.
That very much speaks to self-connection.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
Right. And we need to check that. I mean,
good
we all need to
technique.
check those things. Yeah.
Love that.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself. Would you agree?
Wow.
Exactly.
No, let go and let God.
All right, man. Are you ready to go
Yeah,
into...
that's just one I wanted to tackle before.
No, that's great. Sorry,
Love
I
it.
just jumped into it because I was like, we're going to this thing. So the segment called Behind the Veil, really what it is for us is a moment just to take a pause, switch gears a little bit, and to talk about things that are happening here at Shelter Cove that on a staff level have affected us or things that we're working through. And so this is that segment. For me, I'll jump off.
Wait, don't you have like
Yeah, I gotta think of
a little ditty you do, like a little song? I heard it the
I think
last
Spanish
time.
flea.
Someone did it. Who did it?
Oh, it was me, but it wasn't official. I just like
No, you guys made it official in the
I
last
vocalized
episode.
it. But
Wow. I really do not remember the last episode. You are saying things that
I don't
just
remember ours either, so you're
Yeah.
totally
Oh my
good.
gosh.
Yeah.
You just
So
let the Holy Spirit
for
talk.
me right now, things that are happening at the church that I'm working through are our prayer night. It's coming up on September 9th. I'm super excited. That 7 p.m. I'm going through all the planning, all the who's the team, who's going to be there, what songs are we going to do, elements in the service, how that's going to go, what is this pastor going to do? That's where my head is, and I've been planning that for the last couple weeks. And then the other big thing for me, and this has kind of been for the last several months, even kind of at the middle of summer, has been Christmas. We've been
Oh
planning.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Jeez.
We've been planning Christmas since what is it?
Yeah, you're like
May,
June.
March, May, June.
Yeah,
something
oh
like
yeah,
that.
May probably even. I mean, I
That was
wasn't
our first
there,
meeting,
yeah.
but
Does that
Yeah.
mean you put all the Christmas decorations up in your house already, like the stores
gosh.
do?
to get into the mood.
Yeah.
they just
Yeah.
stay up year round because we're too lazy to take them down.
Yeah, there you go.
Poor Thanksgiving.
Right.
Yeah,
Poor
poor
Thanksgiving.
What's going on in your
over.
world, man?
Yeah, I was just I don't know, I was trying to think in a funny way, next week from Friday I have an all-nighter. And so, which I got to get. Your son was asking me about information about that.
Yeah, can you give me that?
Yeah, I'll get that to you. Don't worry.
Couldn't find it on
so
the
that
website.
happens next week. So if you're catching this live, pray for me. And if you catch it when it drops, probably at the end of the month, pray for me that I survived because you can pray backwards. But anyways, because God's outside of time. I was just reading about it.
Wow. Hey.
And just pray for me because that's just fun having a bunch of teenagers hanging out with them all night.
Yeah, but you're the one that
gosh.
decides to do it, so it's like
Yeah,
you're
I
a
do.
glutton for
Yeah.
punishment.
Oh my
Every year
gosh.
I'm less and less
God
inclined
bless
to do
you,
it.
sir.
So
But they love it. They look forward to it.
No, they
all
do. That's the
year.
bummer. I can't take it away from them.
know
Anyways,
that.
I care too much about what they
It's
think of me.
because of something you did that
A
we
week
can't
later,
do that
I'm
now.
already being asked, "When's the next all-nighter? When's the next all-nighter?"
Yep.
Oh my God.
But then I also got to unpack. This is something that I'm really excited about this year for junior high stuff that I'm doing. Which I didn't mention that I work with junior high here and kind of junior high minister.
That explains
And
how you
so,
know
yeah.
your boy.
Yeah. And so I'm really excited. What's the best way to explain it? There's like this movement of youth organizations and groups and resources and stuff called 10 by 10. And their whole thing is like, hey, let's get together churches and resourcing groups and youth programs, all this stuff. Let's get everyone together to reach 10 million teenagers in 10 years to counteract the 1 million teenagers that leave the faith every single year.
Okay.
And so that's why they're called 10 by 10. That's their vision. And so I'm using some resources from them and I'm really excited about it. They have like these great videos that unpack like Christian basics for the junior hires that we're going over. And so I'm just all in that vision. Like I'm about it. Like let's reach 10 million in 10 years. And so I was just unpacking that with the students on Tuesday when we were hanging out. And I just felt really encouraged by that. That's something that we can tackle, and hopefully the students will rally behind that, and they'll be reaching their friends at school and stuff like that. So just really excited about that. That's something that's been on my heart.
Dude, that's awesome. How many all-nighters do you do a year? Is it just annually?
I do. So this one coming up is with the Youth Ministry Network in Modesto. So there'll be a bunch of other youth groups that are also going to be there, which is great just to hang out with other youth groups. And they see kids from school that they're like, oh, I didn't know you go to youth group.
It's also nice to cover your bases for leaders, I'm sure.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, the more the merrier. The more the merrier.
That's right.
Staffing, baby.
Big time. And then they want me to do like a Shelter Cove specific one so badly. And last year I didn't do one and they almost mutinied. So I'm probably going to do one in spring. I'll do a Shelter Cove only one, which is pretty fun.
Skibbity-doo.
Yeah.
Is that what
Pardon?
they say? Is that what they say?
Skibbity. Crushed it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Skibbity Ohio
I don't
Rizzler.
know, whatever. I'm combining eras.
Wait, what'd you just say?
Skibbity Ohio Rizzler.
Okay.
Wow.
Our Gen Alpha viewing count just shot up. The algorithms just
Do you
grabbed
have
this.
to, as
and-
I always wondered this, as
What's
a
that?
youth leader, you have to constantly change your verbiage.
I try not to. Yeah, I try not to use it though because there's all
okay.
those youth pastors who are really cringe that are like,
Oh, yes.
that are like, what? Did Peter have Riz? And it's like,
What the heck?
and it's like,
is-
no, I'm not doing that. But I also don't want to not use it at all because if I
Right.
don't
Right.
stay in like, if I don't have a pulse on youth
that's neither
culture,
black nor
I'm
white.
lost. So
It's not black and white.
it's not. Yeah. So there's a tension
Nice.
there.
Dude, have you
right?
seen
As
that
with
T-shirt
everything.
that it's like Jesus dribbling a basketball? It says Christ is risen, but it's R-I-Z-Z-E-N.
I have. Yeah, I have. And somebody I know and care about very deeply has it and wore it once, and I was furious. So, so yeah.
I don't know what that means, by the way, risen. Maybe we can't.
It's short for
Riz.
charisma.
Yeah,
My
Riz is short for
parents
charisma.
Say I have mom riz.
Oh.
My kids
Yeah.
tell me I have mom riz.
Oh, no kidding. It's
I hate
because
that.
charisma
Thank you.
Yep.
is so exhausting to complete
right.
as a word.
Yeah.
Just like things
That's
are
And Riz
sus.
has Z's, which makes it cool.
Things are
Jeez.
sus. They don't say suspicious. That's so sus.
That's
Sus.
sus. I've heard
That's sus.
sus.
Yeah,
Just gotten lazy
Spesh.
in there.
I've heard spesh.
Spesh?
Maybe
They're not
I'm-
using that one anymore.
Maybe,
Just,
okay.
just a heads up.
I will stop now.
I'll just
before I
get,
hurt
get
myself.
ahead of that. Yeah.
That's your dementia kicking in and not giving you the rest of
That's
the word.
spesh. I'm gonna make spesh.
So last year we did an event called a Serve Rally, which is where we bring all of our volunteer
And it's coming
teams.
up actually.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, that's probably another behind the veil thing. Anyway, we did a game that night where we had boomers and Gen Z and
Whoa.
Boomers and Zoomers.
boomers and Zoomers.
Wow.
And what we did was we gave each group the other's lingo and asked them to share with the room what they thought it meant. It was an amazing game. It was
Oh
so
my
fun.
So
gosh.
so the Zoomers had to answer like, what
So
is
cool.
drop a dime? What
Oh
is?
my gosh.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure about saying that one. What is boob tube? And so to
Watching-
hear
watching
Gen
the boob
Z
tube.
try to figure out what
Uh-huh.
boob tube meant was funny.
Yeah.
And then what did the boomers get? They get like
Groovy.
yeah, they got
Oh, that's right,
Stan. That's a
Stan.
good one.
Yeah, I don't remember all the words, but yeah, it was just
So
it went
fun.
over really, really well. So anyway, that's what I was just thinking about as we were talking about all the
That
slang.
that
and
sounds
stuff.
a lot of fun.
It was a great time.
Because I've seen the one where it's like how like a daughter and a mom, they're like, how would you hold the telephone? And my generation goes like this, but the other ones are like this,
Oh my word.
Yeah.
Whoa.
That's so funny.
right?
Oh gosh.
They'll
also
never
do
know
this.
they'll never know the
Yeah.
joy of slamming the phone on the receiver and how edifying
Oh
that
yeah.
can be.
I know that
I don't know that joy, but I want it.
And then you and scrape it just to really get the message across.
But there should be fake phones
I used to do that
in
with
every
my work
house
phone.
But I do know that because I'm a Zillennial, so I still I still grew up like I remember the cord on the phone, and then I remember when the cord went away, and then I remember cell phones. Like I remember growing up through that.
I mean, if you do it right, you can hear the bell in the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that felt so good.
With gusto.
I mean, I got to try that sometime.
I used to have anger issues, which is why I have many counselors. I'm so much better now.
Oh my gosh.
Counseling works.
Guys, this has been Behind the Veil. I want to jump back into
I want to hear your little.
I don't even remember what it was.
Gonna have
I'm telling
to go back
you,
and
Spanish
listen to
Flea.
Yeah?
70s.
That's great.
We're
We get
recording that,
copyrighted,
right? We
but that
got
was
that.
great.
That's it.
There's your segue.
There it is.
You're welcome.
That's the real reason
my
we wanted you to
gosh.
come out.
Yeah.
this morning. We needed to workshop that.
Right. And I'm surprised also, before we jump back into the actual topic, I'm surprised of how many few accents you've done.
Well,
That's
I
like-
tried
that's
to
like
keep it
your
on the
thing.
down low because we have a real accent here, and I don't want to embarrass
We
myself.
actually
like
had
the
this
other times I didn't embarrass
conversation.
myself.
We had this
Sounded
conversation at
James
work
Bond.
yesterday. I said, "Are you going to be able to not do a British accent the whole time?"
I really
But
want to
I
hear it
think the
Which
now.
fact that
region?
James didn't get a mic has really helped.
There you
Yeah.
There you go.
Anyways. Well, guys, this is the ending of our episode here, and we call it the final thought. And if I'm being honest
call
with
it
you,
that?
I
We do
I
now.
call it
We
that.
do
Okay,
now.
cool.
I call it that.
James is also like,
He's confused.
A
I call it
different
that.
segue song.
Maybe in my head. In my head, I call it that.
So at the end of our Bible study, really quick, at the end of our Bible study we do on the weekends with junior high, I'll ask them if they have any last words. And it's just very funny.
Oh, wow.
They're like, "Are you gonna kill us?"
Yeah, I was gonna say. I was like, wait a minute.
Keep them guessing, man.
Any last
Keep
words?
'em
Yes, that's
guessing,
right.
man.
Keep
Yeah,
them on their
Depends
toes.
on how much
Yep.
money your parents have given me.
Yeah, exactly. Are you tithing?
Yes.
No, I'm just kidding.
I'll pay you later.
Oh my
Nathaniel.
gosh! But if I'm being honest with you, usually we have like a run of show where we have questions and notes and things that we want to cover. But the final thought for this episode was empty, and I think it's probably apropos. That's my big word for today.
nice.
It's probably apropos.
James, pull up apropos. No, I know it. It's appropriate. It's just
yeah. It's
Why
appropriate.
can't you just say appropriate? Why do you
Because
have to
it
get all
Doesn't sound as good.
Thank you, Chris.
Apropos.
Apropos. Anyhow, I wanted to leave the final thought as an open conversation, just to see if there was anything that we had missed or any final thoughts that you two had about Christian counseling in general, or anything that you feel like. Or I remember this is actually maybe a question that you guys could tackle if you wanted to. The idea of the train left without me. Oh my gosh! Don't you hate when that happens?
you can run and catch it.
There's a cure for
They
that.
don't start very fast.
Oh my gosh!
Well, I have one of the questions you sent, which was, what's one thing you would say to someone before getting into counseling?
That's the one I was thinking of. Thank you.
Was it really?
Genuinely.
That is awesome.
That
Holy Spirit.
genuinely
Holy
was the
Spirit.
question I was
reader.
thinking
Look at
of.
that.
Wow.
Thanks. Vibing.
What do you mean
Right?
getting into counseling? Like them going to counseling or becoming a counselor? That's what I didn't understand
Yes.
about the question.
But, well, so I took it as like a first time client.
Right. Yeah.
Sure.
That's I think what we were thinking.
Because like I have a whole sheet that wonderful Chris over here wrote up, and I actually use it.
You're the one.
I'm the one. I'm the one that
don't even use your own sheet, man.
No, I do.
But I always tell clients, like, I can guarantee two things when you're doing counseling. The first thing is it's gonna get harder.
Oh man.
It is gonna get harder. It's when you start digging into stuff,
Yes.
you're gonna feel like, why did I do this? And it's kind of like the Israelites when they left Egypt and they were in the wilderness, right? They kept wanting to turn around and go back, like, oh, it was so much better being in slavery.
Yeah. Ignorance is
Man.
bliss.
Right.
Oh,
and
God.
so I will guarantee you will feel like you're in the wilderness. You will discover things you never wanted to discover.
You know
You
it.
will work through things that are really, really hard. And the other thing I can guarantee is that if you work through that, you will get to the other side and it will be better.
Yeah.
That's the promised land, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I do what I do. I'm here to walk with people through the wilderness. In my own journey, I had to walk through the wilderness by myself for a good decade. And I don't want no one should have to walk through that alone.
Wow.
Sure.
And so I think that's why it's so important to have a counselor or a really great friend who can just walk through that wilderness, who's there to kind of cheer you on, encourage you, or sometimes grab your foot and drag you further
Yeah.
along, because sometimes
Yeah.
that's what you need
Yeah.
to get you to the other side of it. Yeah.
like Sam at Mount
I was
Doom.
gonna-
Were you gonna say that?
Samwise Gamgee?
Yeah.
Yes!
He can't carry the ring, but he can carry Frodo.
Oh my God, I'm not
Dude,
gonna
that
leave
part's
you,
so-
Mr. Frodo.
No idea what you're talking about.
Gosh, Lord of the Rings,
And I'm,
man.
accent.
I'm
There it
okay
is.
with it.
It's amazing.
Oh, guy.
The
Anyway,
gospel echoes in Lord of the
gospel
Rings.
The part of your
screams.
brain
Yeah,
that's taken
yeah.
up with that knowledge, I have actually good knowledge taking up that part of my
She's
brain.
got like counseling
It
stuff in there.
connects to other knowledge. Hello.
Does
Yeah.
it?
It's not a finite amount of
That's-
knowledge.
I got
That's
Harry
great,
Potter
though.
knowledge.
Chris,
That's
what
great.
would you say?
Oh boy, I had something and then the train left the building, so to speak.
Left the building?
I
Yours
think
wasn't doing
without you,
in the
this
building.
train left. It was your train that left you.
Yeah,
Now
but it
it's
wasn't
left
a building.
the
Anyways,
station.
there you go.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go.
Yeah, there it is.
No, okay, I got it back. I think that so the Christian life involves sanctification, and sanctification is not easy. And I think that's necessary. I think our culture has lied to us when it says life should be easy and comfortable.
Yeah.
Because in seeking comfort, we have no resilience for life,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
That's huge.
And so people cope with that by disconnecting in so many ways. They keep busy, they get involved in addictions, they numb in any way, shape, and form that God has provided for us. Yeah. So all that to say is we get used to living in this chronic pain, this chronic discomfort, and we don't see it. And we think it's normal.
Mm-hmm.
The road to change is often involves the idea that we become aware of our chronic pain, but then changing something or connecting to ourselves or doing something different is unknown and scary. I call that the burning building. In running into the burning building, there is an acute discomfort and pain, but acute discomfort and pain lasts for a moment compared to the chronic pain of a lifetime. Yeah. And that is where the sanctification happens, in the acute, in the I don't know what is on the other side of this door, and it scares the crud out of me. That's why you have counselors. That's why you have a church body, right? Mm-hmm. That's why we have the gospel to say, Lord, you're calling me to this thing, and it feels so unsafe. It's supposed to be unsafe. It's unsafe, but it's good, as C.S. Lewis would say, right? And so you're not meant to do it alone, man. It is a community that you can come around and, believe me, bawl your head off, scream and cry, rip your clothes as you cross that threshold to places that the Lord wants to take you that are difficult but are also beautiful and powerful and liberating. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, that's great.
Man. Well, guys, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys for having us.
For having us.
I do want to give you guys an opportunity. If our listeners want to connect with you outside of our podcast, how do they do that?
Well, we have a podcast.
Yeah, I was
We
gonna
do.
say, please mention that.
It's our next question. It comes out every Monday. We have over 60 episodes now,
Yeah.
so you have a lot.
Come on.
Wow.
It's kind of like free counseling.
There's a
Let's
huge
go.
catalog.
Yeah. So a lot of good stuff there. Me personally, you can connect with me. Instagram's the only thing I do. If I do that, Caroline.relatable. Yeah.
We have a
Yeah.
website,
We have a
DowneyParkCounseling.com.
Mm-hmm.
We have an office in Modesto. We have an office in Turlock. We are now taking all kinds of insurance and more to come.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
So we want to be able to drop those barriers for a lot of folks who are needing the help.
That's awesome.
You have a website,
Yeah, I was going to say,
chrisoneth.com.
chrisoneth.com.
I do,
I have a
but
website.
it
Cool.
sounds so cheesy. It's
I have a website.
No, that's great.
I
Well, no,
hate that because
I don't have one.
It
Jealous.
sounds like Chris Oneth Ministries. It's like, who's that really about? I'm not to poo-poo.
I'm
others.
glad you mentioned it, though, because you did mention that you wrote an article, and I'm
Is that
assuming
where
that
it's
it's
found?
on there.
It is, yeah,
Okay.
it is on the blog. And I haven't written a blog in a while, but a while back I wrote for pastors when pastors should refer.
Yeah.
So
I have a website, relatablecoaching.com.
totally.
Lots of past blogs. Haven't written in a while.
Right?
We'll get back to
Life
that.
gets busy.
Podcasting.
We're talking instead of
podcasting now.
writing.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
We just
No, I
realize
get
that's
it.
a lot easier.
Or you can find me downtown. There's actually a new coffee shop that is opening up, Penny University.
Really?
And it is a soft opening on Saturday the 14th. I told them I'd shout them out this morning.
Wow.
Write that down.
Well, there it is.
And I will
Were
be
you just there this morning? Or no, they said
No,
soft
they have
opening.
a
That's
booth
right.
at the farmer's market.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And
I
I'm
forget
super
about
stoked
farmers
about it
market.
because we need more great places downtown. Because as Christians, we need to go to these places and show our love.
Yes.
Amen.
Generous.
By downing
that's awesome.
caffeine.
Awesome.
Oh my gosh. Well, guys, thanks again so much for being a part of. Sorry, James is motioning something. What are you?
He has caffeine in his hand.
As we speak.
I was waiting for him to take a drink after he said that. You should have
What are you
just
drinking?
done a chug.
I'll let you guys,
What are you waiting? What are you
What-
drinking?
what
I'm
have
not
you
gonna give the
done?
people fine.
He has a Monster.
Oh, it's a monster.
Oh, it's a monster.
I mean, he does work with junior hires, which please don't encourage
he
junior
gets a
hires to
pass.
drink Monsters.
I don't.
You want me to show you the scientific
He's a closet
research
drinker.
on that?
They have enough energy. I'm sure.
Yeah. They sap it from him.
Go ahead and cut the feed.
Should we talk about what this does to your brain drinking these energy drinks?
Oh man, yeah. I get into a lot of hot water from just about everybody.
Okay, good. Well, I know I saw James over there too. So yep. Nope.
As he throws away
You
his
actually
Red Bull.
talked about it on your last episode. We'll have an intervention when we cut.
Yeah, when we cut the feed here. Guys, thanks so much for listening. And as always, you can always reach us on Instagram at WAYT Podcast, or you can email us. Please do so. Share this episode with somebody that you feel like could benefit from it. We love you guys, and we will catch you on the next one. Peace.